Hello, welcome to Level Up STEM with SEL. This is brought to you by Canyon Professional Development, a part of Grand Canyon University. Hi, my name is Cece Bosma. I am a Canyon PD K-12 Professional Development Manager. I've been in the field of education for more than 15 years now, with a focus on science and STEM education in K-8 classrooms. My email is cecilia.bosma@gcu.edu. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I am eager to help in any way that I can. I always like to start with a quote, and I found that this one works well with our topic. Intertwining social and emotional learning and academics advances the ability of our students to adapt to change with the essential skills to effectively manage challenges. And that is brought to us by Dr. Karen Burke, and it was posted on a blog on Scholastic. And I always like to bring in a quote to help us focus. And with this quote, look for ways that explicit use of SEL in the STEM classroom will assist your students in managing the unique challenges of STEM learning. As we go through this workshop, consider how SEL and STEM learning go together. So our goals will be to explore research-based STEM and SEL strategies that incorporate inquiry, design, and collaborative learning. Learn how to use problem-solving techniques that develop students' soft skills and academic growth. And our objectives today, we are going to figure out the why of SEL and STEM, why they go together, how to create an environment for rigor, and we want to practice SEL strategies for optimal STEM engagement. And lastly, as an independent assignment, take a look at a video and see if we can find those links between SEL and STEM practices. And that brings us to what will you take away today. So as we go through this mini lesson, please feel free to take notes. Feel free to go back in the video and rewatch things. We really want you to get the most out of this training as you possibly can. So as we work our way through the training, consider what your takeaways might be, and we can summarize those at the end. So STEM is an acronym that stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. It is the combination of these subject areas that are infused into student-centered problem solving, often using the engineering design process or analyzing data and finding answers to observable phenomena in the world. When we guide students through these discovery processes, it is important to explicitly teach the soft skills that they will need to be successful. This includes SEL, which is social and emotional learning. Students need a foundation for successfully managing their behaviors and understanding their emotions. We want to provide students with engineering challenges that help them build academic and SEL competencies. When you look at these competencies, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills, these are around the STEM circle. What do you think about those competencies? Are they related to STEM? How are they related? Consider those questions as we work our way through this module. SEL can be explicitly taught across the curriculum. It is an important component to successfully navigating STEM learning. STEM is an open-ended and can be challenging for students who aren't used to trying new ideas, teamwork, problem solving, and decision making. SEL helps students manage frustrations when they struggle to learn. STEM projects require teamwork. and SEL provides the soft skills to be successful. SEL provides students with skills for social success, and SEL teaches students how to solve problems and think critically. SEL can be explicitly taught across the curriculum, and it is also important for the skills that are needed for success. Critical thinking and analysis, complex problem solving, and self management skills are the skills of the jobs of the future. I am sure you have heard it said that the jobs that students that we have today will have tomorrow have not even been developed yet. And while this may be true, it is important to help students develop the skills that they will need to be a part of this quickly changing workforce. And these are those soft skills. So let's take a look at how the SEL competencies have STEM connections. So we look at building self-awareness. Your students must be able to identify and objectively consider their own emotions and thoughts, and to recognize how these affect their own behaviors. In STEM, we are building a growth mindset. Manage emotions. Self-control and self-discipline are major SEL growth areas for kids. Once students recognize their emotions, they can develop ways for managing their impulses, stress, motivation, and actions. The research and design process are open-ended and challenging. While this can be stressful, teaching self-management will help in working through the process. Social awareness. This is where we build empathy. Teachers can help students to learn and look at things from the perspective of others. Show acceptance and respect and appreciate diversity. Social skills are critical to students' success. From my standpoint, caring is the most crucial social trait that today's kids can develop. Human-centered design thinking focuses on the user and how they can be helped by exercising empathy. We also want to cultivate healthy relationship skills. Your students need to be able to establish and maintain healthy relationships, communicate clearly, listen actively, cooperate, and deal constructively with conflict. Productive collaboration may be the most important relationship skill for them to master. Great communication is essential to developing great relationships. And then we have that responsible decision making. Kids must be able to reflect on multiple ideas and adjust their own thinking as needed. They need to practice identifying and analyzing problems and to focus on developing solutions that are both effective and ethical. In STEM investigations, students are thinking critically and problem solving. We want them to develop resilience. More than ever, your students need to be able to bounce back from setbacks. Building persistence can pave their way to a more successful life. Help your students to learn from their failures and guide them in using failures to redesign successful solutions. Set goals and organize. Guide your kids in working towards personal and academic goals, including STEM challenges. Strategies for doing this can carry over into other areas and give kids the tools for managing the behaviors and emotions. So this is the STEM process of human-centered design. And as you might notice, it does look a whole lot like the engineering design process. Only we're bringing in the first component, which you see here, which is to empathize. And with empathy, we want to observe, we want to view the user in a relevant context and identify some workarounds to whatever the problem might be. So we have to engage and interview through conversation. This might be using prepared questions, but also allowing the conversation to flow. You want to make sure you're asking the why. And requires sort of a combination of observe and engage. You want to watch and listen. A conversation that happens while interacting with artifacts to gain the why. All of these happen during the first stage, the empathy stage. And then you want to map what you've uncovered so that you can share with other designers, with your teammates. And then we want to define what is the challenge, what is the problem that needs to be solved, what is the need. Express the problem you want to address. This is where you synthesize your findings and make sense of it to develop insight. Develop the problem statement that combines the user needs and insights that will drive the design process. This should be discrete, not broad. We want to get specific here. Which brings us to the third step, ideate. Sketch radical ways to solve the problem. This is where you get to brainstorm. Share your sketch with your group. Be a little bit crazy in this step. This is where you get to go, think as creatively as you can about how that problem might be solved. You're going to share your sketch with your group. And then as a group, you have to choose an idea, which, in the best of groups, it's sort of an amalgamation of several of the individual ideas. So you push for a wide range of possible ideas. And this will fuel a source for building a prototype. Use your imagination along with understanding the problem, space, and people you are designing for. Step beyond the obvious. You want to increase innovation and then harness that collective perspective by working with each other's ideas. And be prepared to explore the unexpected. Which brings us to prototype. Draw and build your prototype, or build your prototype. Everyone gets to participate. So often in the prototype, I like to assign my students roles such as project manager, game player, materials engineer, assembler. This helps to keep the group running cohesively if everybody knows what their job is within the group. And you want to create that prototype and be creative. It can be anything a user can interact with. So that could be a storyboard. It could be role playing. It could be simply drawing a model. We don't want to use expensive resources in this stage. And we don't want to get overly attached because this is like a rough draft. So test possibilities. And then you want to test. And this could be testing the model and also getting input and feedback from other people, including who the person or people that you are designing for. So you want to share your solution, you want to get feedback, you want to learn more about your user. Groups will you could present your ideas for a gallery walk. Ask why questions. Do not ask yes and no questions. And then at that, and we want to make sure we're showing, not telling. So considering after the feedback phase, what worked? What can be improved? What questions do you still have to answer? And once you have worked through those, you get to go back to the ideate phase and come up with a new design or a tweaked design, and then a new prototype, and then testing. And you can run through, that's a very cyclical process. It can be gone through many times before you arrive at a final solution. The human-centered design process captures several learning experiences and is a tool for developing the skills our students will need for success in the workforce. So let's take a look at these competencies. Self-management. We want to manage our worries and our fears. And this can be can be completed virtually or in person, as maybe as a journal entry, or maybe the students will share with each other, and it can be done on a Jamboard virtually. On this one, this is a Jamboard, and it was made just drawing two circles and then using post-it notes, grabbing those virtual post-it notes. So with this particular activity, the students are looking at what they can control and what they cannot control. And so when considering what is worrying them and what causes them angst and fear, they can categorize those things that are causing that fear and worry as what I can control, and those go in the middle circle, and what I cannot control, and those go in the outside circle. When we identify what is in our control and what we can focus our efforts on to make our job more focused and easy, then we can identify what we cannot control, and we have to learn to let go of those things. And it makes the work a little easier. In order for students to learn how to self-manage their emotions, they must first learn to identify their emotions. There are several ways to do this, both in person and virtually. Another idea is to assign a color to your emotion or an emoji, and also to manage our abilities. Not all of us are going to be at the exact same level in math or science or reading. And we have to remember to be aware of our own abilities and the fact that we're all learning together. And virtually, students can use a Jamboard to share their emotions. It can be helpful to know what you may that you may share an emotion with other students, that you're not all alone. And together you can develop ways to manage your emotions. And this particular Jamboard was created, and there is a link to this Jamboard in the modules so that you can access this and use it yourself. So working through the design process can be stressful. Once you identify stress, manage it. And here are a few techniques that will help. This first one is square breathing. Square breathing is one of the many breathing techniques that are helpful in self-regulation. It is important to practice this often so students can tap into it when they need it. And teachers, you can model this as well from time to time in your classroom. But you definitely want to make sure that you introduce these breathing techniques during a quiet, unstressful time, like at a regular point in time in your classroom, when they get back from recess after lunch, or at the beginning of the day, or at the end of the day. But pick a time in your classroom where this is just practiced on a regular basis so that kids can access this technique when they are feeling stressed. Waiting till they're stressed to introduce it is probably not going to work the greatest. So let's try a couple of rounds right now of square breathing. So before we begin, I want you to plant your feet on the floor and sit up. Take a moment to rest your thoughts. And now we will begin. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And exhale, 2, 3, 4. How did that feel? If you're doing this with your students, I would suggest that you do a minimum of 4 to 5 rounds of the square breathing, just to really get them settled into hearing their breath. It's a very powerful exercise that will help them control their emotions. And then we're going to go to the next slide as well. We have the 5 senses. And so we'll take a look at how this works. And these are just a couple of mindful techniques. There's a lot out there on the internet if you want to do more research. So we have the Take 5 grounding exercise. And I love this because I think it goes so well with science and STEM learning, just learning to be observant of the world around us, right? So we are going to look for 5 things that we see around us. 4 things that we touch. Do we touch our chair, the clothes we have on, our desk, our arms, and so on? 3 things that we can smell. If this happened just after PE, I'm sure there's going to be a few smells. And then we might want to think, just very quietly listen to 2 things that we can hear. What are 2 noises that come through? And then lastly, what's something that we taste? Rub your tongue around the inside of your mouth. And that technique is just one very simple way to get kids grounded and thinking about their surroundings, because oftentimes we rush so quickly through life that we don't really get a chance to observe what is going on around us. So we also want to build social awareness. And these are some STEM strategies. When we're working in projects and we have team conflict, how can SEL come along and help mitigate those issues? Well, first we can be preemptive by creating some team norms, and also looking at team reflections. So with team norms, we want students to participate in building those team norms. They can identify what is most important to them in group work and develop norms that will assist in diminishing conflict and identifying mutual goals. Students need to be involved in the development of the norms. It empowers them to adhere to the norms that they have developed and agreed to. It is always important to also include reflection throughout a STEM investigation in order to improve social intelligence. Students should routinely consider what is working within the group dynamic and what needs to be improved. This can lead to adjusting team norms to make them work better for the group. And you have access to this Creating Team Norms PDF, and it also includes several other group aspects as well. So you have the team norms, the team strengths, and as well when they're working on a STEM activity where students can assign themselves or each other, however you choose to have them assign positions within the team. So it's a very helpful document that you can use as well. Presentations can be challenging, but with structured feedback, the lines of communication are helpful and not hurtful. And so we're trying to build those strong relationships in STEM. And with the SEL strategies, we can have structured presentations and helpful feedback. So good feedback should be kind, helpful, and specific. We can phrase our feedback with "I likes" and "I wonders." And these are great ways to be non-confrontational, but make suggestions where improvements might be needed. We want to improve, and further iterate to come upon solutions. So these are just a few guidelines that help build those relationships and keep the STEM project moving forward. And it is important to, in building relationships, to have clear lines of communication. Talking is only half of the process. We also must learn to listen. Listen to understand, not respond. It basically means that we need to be empathetic. Empathy is the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of another. And that's according to Merriam Webster. Empathy comes naturally to some, but it is a little tougher for others. Thankfully, there are tools that can help everyone better employ empathy. Empathy in the workplace is necessary for productivity, just as it is in the classroom. We need to directly teach and model for our students to gain empathy. Self-awareness and empathy are key components of social and emotional learning. We need to understand our own emotional state and have the tools to understand the perspectives of others. So, when you hear students struggling with that team dynamic, using questioning to help your students reflect on the situation and gain perspective, you will find is much more helpful than just telling them to get along. And it helps students to create a plan to diminish these frustrations and build positive relationships. So some of these questions can go something like this: how does it feel when your ideas are dismissed? How do you think she feels right now? Or he? What could you do so that both of your ideas are valued? And then we have that responsible decision making that is built into STEM, and we want to problem solve using our SEL strategies. Uh, using equity and group ideas to design and problem solve. You may have noticed that these competencies are interrelated. Students rely on group norms to carry out STEM practices. Sometimes we have to repeat the process in STEM to develop a solution. This can take several tries, which requires learning to push oneself and manage emotions when an iteration is not successful. Use the questioning process to encourage your students to reflect on what they have accomplished and what they have learned from the experience. How does discussing with others impact your learning? What patterns and meaningful categories do you find? What was beneficial to your learning or enjoyable about working with your small group, and why? What was challenging about the process, and what strategies did you use to accomplish the task anyway? There are limitless design challenges. Try one of these with your students. Build a paper bridge to support 4/4. Design a better commute. Design an object that flies and can deliver a payload. Design a musical instrument. Perhaps design a new pen that aids the user in some new way. Think about all the pens that are available at the office supply store. Different inks, different shapes, sizes, etc. Create an innovative pen. There is a link for a clip from the movie Apollo 13, and it demonstrates the human centered design process, and it contains the elements of that process. And I challenge you, when you are finished with this video, to click on that link and see if you can't identify the SEL competencies. So go to that video and also the module resources and use that human-centered design plan to identify the SEL competencies at work in the movie clip. Most important, how you will incorporate the SEL competencies in your next STEM activity. So these are just a few of the ways that we can incorporate SEL. I want you to consider, what is your takeaway today? How will you incorporate intentionally teaching SEL skills into your STEM lessons? I want you to use the STEM and SEL human-centered design process worksheets that is in the resources to help your students start and build SEL competencies in STEM learning. Consider how you will build SEL in your STEM classroom. Be sure to start with the practice of breathing techniques. Students need to be very familiar with self-management techniques so that they are able to use them when they are stressed. What is your takeaway? How will you intentionally build SEL into STEM lessons? And this is our why: to empower, educate, and inspire our communities so that they take action to fulfill their purpose and serve others. And canyonpd.com is your one-stop shop for all Canyon PD resources. Please visit our website. We are here to support you. And finally, this is my list of references that for this presentation, which are also in the resource section. Thank you for being a part of SEL in STEM.